Hi there, beautiful souls. Welcome. My name is Sadhana, and I'm an intuitive reader and healer. And I want to welcome you to my channel. Thank you so much for joining. Today, I'm going to carry on a discussion of the Visions Tarots by James R. Eads. And these are the Prisma Visions, Light Visions, and Cosma Visions, which is called an oracle deck, but I'm comparing it here today in terms of tarot. I've used it as a tarot deck, used it for full readings and so forth. And so whether it's a tarot or an oracle isn't really important to me at this time. Part one of this video, we covered from the Fool or Death in Cosmovisions through to the Shore, with the Shore or the Tower. And this video, we're going to be starting with the Star, which is known as the Veil in Cosmovisions. I'm going to go through the cards rather slowly, and we will, just be comparing and contrasting the three decks, talking about the medicine of the cards, how I might interpret them. I'll be sharing with you the cards that I'm really drawn to and which ones not so much. And I expect that I will get through, that it will take one more video to complete this walkthrough because I want to take my time with it. I have worked to date with Cosmovisions more than the other two decks. I purchased Cosmovisions during the Kickstarter when it first came out, and so I have the large box of this deck. And then when the Kickstarter came out for the mini visions, the little visions, yes, hello Christine, I am busy tonight. When the Kickstarter came out for the little visions, so each of the decks came out in a tin, a little tin. I decided to purchase that. I'm kind of a sucker for traveling decks and little decks. And I also was very interested to have a copy of, I was particularly interested in the more neutral one, which is called Light Visions. But it's interesting. I kind of wish I purchased the large Prisma Visions. It's really beautiful. I thought that Light Visions would be more versatile, and indeed, yes, because it has less color on the cards, but there's something really brilliant and magical about the color in Prisma Visions. So let's get to the cards, and welcome also to Tamian and Joseph, IT guy. Thanks for coming back. So tonight we're starting with the 17th Arcana, the Star. And this is a really interesting portrayal. There are some cards in the deck that look different between the two decks. There appears to be some iterations of the cards that were changed from the original version to now, but because I didn't purchase Light Visions and Prisma Visions when they first came out, I can't really speak to that. So I'm just going to speak to what's on the table. I can't do a comparison of the various versions of the deck. So what we are seeing in the Star card here is it's like a human being catapulted out of a cannon, so to speak. That's kind of what I'm feeling in this card. However, it is not a fearful body language. She is like openly jumping into the abyss. And there's something really interesting here because I feel as if on every level and I wonder if I can, it's okay. I feel like in these next cards, so 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, we are, particularly in this deck, we are entering into a new experience. Oh, you're welcome, Colleen. Okay, I'm just reading your comment. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. we're entering into a new experience. And so there is this very free, open-hearted gesture. And I find this super interesting because one, almost as if this looks like the Fool here. One of my decks that is always close to me is the Wildwood Tarot. And in that deck as well, too, we see the Fool in the Star card, beginning a new journey, heading off into a new experience. So I just think that's kind of wonderful, magnificent. That resonates with me a lot. In the Prisma Visions, it almost looks as if she's coming out of, like, from the frying pan of the Tower card, being launched forth. So I think that's kind of funny. Tamian, I am seeing a silhouette of a head on the Star card. Do you see it? Oh, so this is a nose. This is the nose here. Do you know what? I've never noticed that before. Yes, and I do. I see the hair here. That's really interesting. So if that's the case, it's almost as if she's coming out through her third eye. That's very cool. Now the veil. So the veil is a hugely important symbol for me. And some of you might connect this with the High Priestess, but the veil is referred to, it can be a sheath, but it's also a level of perception known as Maya in Sanskrit. And in order to pierce the veil, what is required is knowledge, but not book knowledge. It's about the processing of knowledge to wisdom. And so we open to other possibilities. We're not stuck in the third dimension. And this is a great card. I could talk about this a lot. So and notice that this figure is kind of testing the veil. I'm not sure they are about to walk through. They are aware that something is on the other side. I'm also I'm seeing in my mind's eye that experience of walking through a waterfall. Have you ever walked through a waterfall? It's a cleansing experience, right? It's a purification thing, but there's also, I just feel so much could be shared in this card should it come up in a reading. And I like both of these cards very much. Yeah. All right, so let's go to the moon. And now I have to say that in the two decks on the left, I love the simplicity of the card compared to what we see in Pamela Coleman Smith's artwork. For me, there's just too much stuff in that scene. I don't need the jackals and the scorpion and the pillars and the path and it's a lot. There's also the water, the way that the moon is shining on the water, on the boat. I'm quite entranced with this particular card. Boats are an amazing symbol. And we do see boats especially if you are doing a reading where you're using Cosma Visions and one of the other decks. I think the symbols cross over very well. Now, granted, the meanings might not be exactly the same in the Big Visions book, but if you are an intuitive reader, you'll be able to weave together a lot of symbols, just like we see bridges in different places in both decks. So I think this is a big plus for what's going on here. And perhaps one day I will do a deep dive into these decks, because that's one of my favorite things to do is to connect the energy of symbols. So what do I think of the bridge card? I see, but this card reminds me, there are a few, oh gosh, is it Eight of Cups or is it Six of Swords? In a few different decks, we see this sort of an image. And I can work with this easily. There's an invitation to, now, if we go back and we look at these two cards side by side, and if you would like me to do a deep dive in Cosma Visions, I will. There's so much I can say about this deck with the suit of, not the suit, the major arcana being connected to the spirit life, to the spirit world, and then the minors being connected to the third dimension. But the bridge here, the portal going from veil to bridge, just makes so much sense. Yes, it does look like an NDE. You are quite right. Hello, Christina. Yes, I did. I said hello to you. Yeah, beautiful. So then we go to the sun. And I want to say, even though this is a brilliant book, the Big Visions book, there's sometimes I have a look at it and I kind of roll my eyes because I feel I don't agree or I see something more. And I am not one who is attached. I'm not attached to what the creator has written. And one of my favorite things to read in a guidebook is when a creator says, this is what I see, or this was what I was experiencing when I was creating the deck, and please make it your own. I love those kinds of phrases. Also, sometimes I've heard interviews with deck creators and they go back to their own deck 5 years later, 10 years later, 20 years later, and they admit to working with it in a completely different way and seeing things that they didn't even know were there when they created the deck. So that's pretty amazing. All right, so what we're seeing in all of these sun cards is an abundance of energy. So sun equals energy. Sun equals the source of life. Without the sun, we wouldn't have life. The sun is also, we can also talk about the whole masculine and feminine thing, not deep diving into this, but the sun is a powerful card that can inspire, amplify, shed positivity on all cards that surround it. And it's funny in the Prisma Visions, when I look at this artwork, it feels a little bit like is it in the Trippin' Weight or the Groovy Weight where we see like all this psychedelic experience? It reminds me of that card very much. There's a lot. There's a lot that's going on here. There's an abundance of light, an abundance of growth and expansion. So I think abundance is also a great keyword for the sun card because it helps things to multiply and to grow. And what I was about to say a moment ago was it connects to our eternal flame, and whether you perceive that in the heart. So from a yogic perspective, your soul is in your heart space. Some people think that inner flame is connected to the solar plexus chakra. It's a slightly different energy, the eternal light. So I see this as both an external and an internal card, and I really like both of them. So the infinite paths interpretation, with all of that light coming around the person in the card, I think it's kind of beautiful. So we have gone through the veil, across the bridge, and now we're walking through and seeing life in a completely different way. And I have to say, this card reminds me of, so one of my favorite books is Autobiography of a Yogi. And Swami Yogananda, when he's talking to Sri Yukteswar and getting him to describe how he experiences life. So when enlightened beings walk through life, they don't see everything as solid. And I cannot imagine um, functioning on this plane with that sort of perception. But that's what I see in that card. I see that. I mean, I have seen the aura of trees, and I have been in a trance-like state in the third dimension multiple times. But to be like that 24 hours a day, wow, that would be mind-blowing. So I really like that card. Now we see the portal here. So in Judgment, we see a portal that has a similar quality to what I see in the bridge card in Cosma Visions. Whereas in Cosma Visions, so at the end of Cosma Visions, what's happening here is we are being transported, our soul is being transported from the spirit plane back to the earth plane. And so that's actually what this is about. This is about that. At least that's how I interpret it. So this is this definitely would kind of be beyond this experience. So I feel like in Judgment, we have endless opportunities to, or the option. There is an option for going through the portal, right? Stepping through the veil. Whether or not we do it is or whether we're ready for it will depend on the surrounding cards. But the unknown card is called unknown, right? The unknown card to me has a much more expansive feel to it, if I can say that. Yeah. So this particular deck, these decks, I feel like the idea of Judgment is not so much an unmasking, but definitely a more a further deeper dive of development, a further stage of development, and then the world. And so here we find ourselves back on this plane. And it's kind of poignant, you know, he writes in the guidebook about the longer that we're here, we forget where we came from. And so it's about truly experiencing life on earth. And I think if we could all embrace the energy of this card, when the world card showed up in a reading, and depending on the deck, I can do that more easily. So in the world card, I just need to go to my big book here. Tons of energy. We do see the all-seeing eye. There's lots of animal archetypes in the energy. It's a pretty intense card for the world card. Pretty intense. I'm going to read to you what he says for this one, okay? In the culmination of the major arcana, the world depicts the moon, the sun, the hangman, the hierophant, the emperor, justice, strength, and the chariot, all rotating around the calm for a focused center of the eye. All rotating around the calm, focused center of the eye. Shown as a whole, these many opposing forces reveal their true pattern, unified at last into one Prisma vision. So there's this idea of culmination, and I really like that word. So culmination is both about completion, but about honoring the journey as well too, and all that has been learned. And so when the world card shows up in a reading, this is definitely a card I don't want to rush through. It does feel like a wheel card. Yeah. And of course, you know, the wheel does have, in a RWS deck, we do see the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac in the corners of both the wheel and the world. There's a lot of crossover between these two cards. It would be brilliant. It would be brilliant if we got, actually, we can do it because I tend to compare X wheel with double X, the judgment X and double X, little change and big change. I compare those two cards, but there's so much that we can talk about if a wheel and a world show up in the same reading together. They're pretty potent. Yeah. I'll read you. I'm just going to read you a couple of lines from this because it's really sweet. And I think when we are struggling with life, if we can remember where we have come from, it can really help. Giant hands lift you up. They pulse with love so deep, you can feel it coursing through your being. In this first embrace, you are home in your new life on earth. When you are a young human, you can often recall your previous lives before being inside of this bodily vessel. It is comforting. It inspires you. This new life is exciting for a long time. But as you grow older, having spent more time on this planet, you start to forget your old soul. It seems so far away, a different life. And think about this. Think about the different life. Even if we're looking at this card, at the world card, we tend to, sometimes we forget. It feels like worlds ago when we were at, I don't know, a different stage, at the Chariot stage, for example. Forgetting the real one behind until the next time around. And with great harmony, another cycle begins. I'm not going to be showing any of the extra cards in this review. All the decks come with extra cards. Not in the little visions, but in the bigger decks. Okay. The suit of fire is referred to as embers. Obviously, you can read that. And we'll be going through these a little more quickly. Primal, right? There's especially the one on the right, there's a great primal energy here. Colleen, I try to let Cosma Visions be what it needs to be for me, because so many of these cards have, it's a bit like, what I would like to do is I would like to do a side-by-side or a discussion of the Osho Zen Tarot and this tarot, because I think there's a lot that they share in common with many cards. And I don't think it's absolutely necessary to, because the names on the cards are so powerful and they match the art so well. I don't think it's necessary to bring in the correspondence. I think I tend to let it be what it needs to be. Colleen says, should I try to memorize the numbers and go from there, or are there any other tricks without having to look at a reference card or book? Colleen, I think with the it's Cosma Visions you're talking about, right? I'm just going to go back here. Yes. For the major arcana, I would just spend some time with single cards and getting to know the deck, especially if some of these concepts don't feel familiar. Memorizing feels a little intense. Yeah. and perhaps working with, I don't know, maybe I should do a deep dive, and that might help. That might help. And I can share some more of my experiences. Okay. So yeah, so most of you are familiar with the tarot. So these cards are not too challenging to read. They're really beautiful. Okay. So twos. What is what can be, so for example, and this happens in other tarot decks as well too, right? Because this looks more like a 3 of cups than a 2 of embers. So that's where this deck can become challenging. If we look at the artwork here, this looks very familiar. We see a wanderer looking out into the great beyond. So in this particular card, remember, you have just returned to this dimension. You stumble across a particular moment in the forest. Barefooted stone women linked in arms seem to have frozen mid-dance. And then you notice a heel lift off the ground and then another. So this is almost like a celebration welcoming you back to this plane. And so what I think is the best thing to do with this deck is, if you can understand that the major arcana is the spirit plane, and then the embers is the first return, the beginning of the return to this plane. And then as we go through each of the suits, you are becoming more, can I say you're becoming more dense? You're becoming, you have been here longer. Okay. So 3 of Wands. 3 of Wands. And remember as well too, that one thing you can do is to lay out the suit on your table, because each of the suits, I'm assuming everybody knows this, but if you don't have the decks, I'm just going to put my bookmark in here. Each of the suits, let me put it here, is part of a larger scene. And so there is a story that unfolds in each of the suits, in all of the decks. So it's kind of, this, I think this is an important part of the process of understanding what's going on. Okay. All right, where are we? 3 of Wands and 3 of Embers. Remember that the number 3 connects to triangulation, right? So creation, it's connected to the Empress energy. And so what we're seeing in the 3 of Wands is, let's see, slow, not slow tarot, the Way Home Tarot. Yes, the slow tarot as well, too. And the Way Home Tarot. We see the bonfire idea. And so this woman here tending to the fire, and I feel her magic, like she's putting energy, and this is not just a bonfire. This is a sacred fire. And so she's creating and tending to the fire. And remember that wands are connected to creation, passion, dharma, and all of that. So I have no problem with a single figure being in this particular card. And in the 3 of Embers, it's like we land, we notice, and then the story begins to unfold. A woman crowned with 3 flames floats off the ground as she is anchored by her 2 companions. Distracted by her premonitions, she spots danger approaching and the devastation that lies ahead. So, what happens when we come down is, there was no fear in the 5th dimension. And now all of these different kinds of experience are going to be presented as a matter of survival. So there is a sense of premonition, looking ahead. Think about it, a Rider-Waite-Smith 3 of Wands, and that whole idea of looking ahead to see what's coming. So you might be able to relate it to that. 4s create structure, right? They create home, they create a basis, they create a foundation. And I think that we see that clearly in all of these cards. I mean, this one is so lovely. This reminds me of different experiences that I have had. Foundation. And then, so one of my keywords is bridge. For 5s, I feel like the transition through the 5 can be really tricky. And this is like a place of no return. We need to commit or quit. And both of them feel almost, sometimes too with the 5 of Wands. And when I'm looking at these cards, I feel almost a dance going on. Like I feel the level of the passion that's there. And which is quite a different energy. Like the 5 of Embers feels like a forest fire. It feels like danger. And I think this is part of the earthly experience that we're unfamiliar with. And so carrying on the theme of the 3 of Embers, we're kind of like walking into fire, walking into unfamiliar territory. 6 of Wands, 6 of Embers. And so 6 is a number of harmony and peace. And so in the 6 of Embers, the fire has subsided and we start to see a balance of the cosmos again. Okay. Beauty. Beauty is an important keyword for me in all of the 6s. And I'm looking for that. A 6 as a connection to the hexagram, the connection of the divine feminine and masculine energy. And while my Kabbalah studies, my awareness of what's going on in the Tree of Life are minimal, I have done quite a bit of crossover study between the chakras and the Tree of Life. And 6s are a super important number. They're my favorite number in the tarot. Love those cards. 7 of Wands. I feel like this card gets a bad rap. I really do. I was trying to think of a scene. Maybe this was, I don't know. I feel like I've seen this scene before. It's almost as if the book cannot be destroyed because the book contains such ancient magic and tradition. And what is emerging from the book is there to teach, it's there to reflect. What does James say about it? As you focus your eyes, a phoenix of fire bursts out of the book and the swirling sky. I feel that You know, when I do readings with this deck, it's so hard to read these cards in isolation because I'm going to pick up on these symbols in different ways. And while what's happening in the lower part of the card feels a little cautionary, you know, this could also look a bit like an Eight of Swords or something. I feel like the reveal, there's something that's being revealed here. There's something that's coming out and coming forth. And what I was saying about the Seven of Wands and also the Seven of Swords kind of getting a bad rap, we need to remember that this is just a stage. And sometimes we have to hang out in the Seven of Wands experience until we're ready to emerge. And it can feel like it's a lot of work. We're continually protecting ourselves. We're not answering the door. We're shutting things out. And whether this is for our own preservation or whether we're actually defending others, this is another card I really want to take my time and have a little chit chat with a querent about this level of. And this can also connect. It's odd, but I find it a deep, a soulful connection of this card with the Four of Cups, the Four of Water. And yeah, anyway, I spend a lot of time talking with my clients if they are repeat clients. I mean, I never go into this level of inquiry if somebody is just a one-off reading, but and sometimes I do. I can tell they're open to learning and deeper discussion. For me, all of the eights are powerful levels of transformation. Infinite potential here. This Eight of Wands card, we kind of see this. The Devil. Do you remember the Devil? I'm just thinking about that energy. There's so many cards, great cards in this. Oh, I put it away. Where is it? Just let me grab the Devil. To me, that's the brilliance of a deck. So I want you to look at the Devil in relation to the Eight of Wands. And to look at the more open-hearted, peaceful energy in the Eight of Wands than the tension. We see here. Yeah. So the Eight of Embers, to me, looks, again, it's very similar to the Five of Fire or the Five of Embers. And I feel that this is quite a challenging suit. And I can only imagine. This is an odd experience. We don't usually remember the first years when we come back, when we incarnate. So applying this deck, applying the messages in this deck to an adult experience, the different stages of experiences, I think is quite profound. You know, sometimes when we begin something new, when we are embracing when it's necessary to take something more from the perspective of a child, people don't like to do that, right? Because we're kind of fixed in our ways. So what's happening in this suit is that we're being asked to step back and start fresh. And the whole thing just feels a lot more challenging in this deck than the others. Okay, so Nine of Wands. It's just a really beautiful journey. I feel the peace of the adventure. really intense transformation here. But look at the light that's coming out of the volcano. I might talk about this card very much like I would talk about a Tower card, and how the journey of this transformation and how the journey through fire can be really intense, but we come out so clean and pure. Yeah. If you've ever, have you done firework? Like I remember my journey through fire. How many solo fires? I think we had to do 6 solo fires as part of our requirement with the element of fire, and that was so intense. And then it's like, we go through the fire and then we find, it's like, to me, this is kind of brilliant. We see the blending of the elements here. So what I look for when I'm reading this card is the interaction of the elements. Colleen says, weird thought, but I feel like Bigfoot would be in the Nine of Wands. I like that. That's funny. Okay, so what is happening between the 9 and the 10 of Wands? We're there. We've made it through. We've made it through to the other side. One of my pet peeves about the RWS is when a reader always defaults to the burden keyword, because there's also a blessing in that, in all of the hard work, all of the tending, all of the care that is gone in the process through the Suit of Wands. And we're so close. We just have a few more steps and we'll be there. And then we can celebrate the completion of this suit. Yeah. I want to read to you a couple words from the 10 of Embers just before we get to the quartz. On the other side of the eruption, so the volcano and the 9 of Embers, a miracle seems to be occurring. The 10 flames careening from the sky are turning into strange alchemical fire, and as the fire strikes the ground, it evaporates into water, leaving seeds of life in place. This also feels a bit like, I'm thinking of Lily White Tower card and some of the medicine that comes out of that. I'm thinking of the Temperance card in the Marielle Tarot. How important these blending up elements are. All right, let's go through the quartz. So the pages. These are beautiful cards. And the quartz in the Cosma Visions have very different energy. I can connect with this beautifully. There's so many Page of Fire cards that I love, and the Wanderer fits perfectly. It feels vibrant and exciting. No, there's kind of no fear. Deeply connected to the Fool card. There's a lightness of heart, but also tremendous passion, curiosity. Yeah, it's a great card. What is difficult in Cosma Visions is to get a handle on all of these court cards. If you sit with the layouts for a while, you'll be able to figure it out. And you know what you were saying? Was it Colleen? When I'm looking at this from the side, I can see a very similar kind of energy here to that which we see in the star. And yeah. So then we go pages, nights. and Shapeshifter. One of the ways that I work with knights. So knights are travelers, knights are pilgrims. They are on a journey with the element. So they're a little deeper into their experience than the pages. I feel like there's I really love the word pilgrimage connected to the knights. I think that that works really well for me. There's also a tremendous sense of movement. So one of the things I look for when I'm reading the tarot is cards of movement versus cards of static. And the whole idea of the shapeshifter fits really well in here because the shapeshifter is one who is transforming with spirit. So that works well with me. Now in the guidebook, the court cards in the Cosma Visions are considered another suit. And they don't come in, they come in a separate section at the back of the book. Mystic works perfectly well for the Queen of Fire. So, yeah. I like these cards. I have no problem with the cards in these decks. They work great. I have become, I have to say that I don't really like this one. I'll read you James's intention for this card, but this one doesn't really work for me. The court cards have become my favorite cards. I know a lot of people are challenged by them, and I guess that's why I created my court card class. It wasn't a big seller, so if anybody ever wants me to revamp the court card class, I can definitely do that, or to do a court card kind of level 2 class. That might be kind of fun. I was going to read to you about the Protector because this is one card that I struggle with. Yeah. It just, I guess also because I have been in a sumo dojo, okay. A molten, so notice here how we see ice and fire. And I think this is an important part of this card. A molten figure emerges from the magma and pounces towards the snowy field. Keen perception gives them the upper hand in a duel as they arrive at the scene ahead at their foe's expectation. The protector has an inner need to guard their territory and those around them. They can predict outcomes of events before they have even begun. So I suppose in a way it kind of connects mystic and then protector, but I don't know. This is one card that I do struggle with. Yeah. All right. So we're at 48 minutes. So I'm going to call that a wrap for today. And I guess I'm going to have to do more than 3 videos. Maybe I can speed this up a little bit, but we'll see. So what I have decided to do is I'm going to do part 3 next Wednesday. And on Friday, I'm going to do another tarot tag. Originally, I was going to do part 3 on Friday, but I've switched that. So we'll carry on with this next Wednesday. And on Friday, I am doing the tarot tag, Tarot Extremes, which is comparing, contrasting opposites in tarot decks. I just thought that would be fun for a Friday topic. Yeah. You agree with me, Colleen? Yeah, not feeling that connection either with Protector. All right, lovely souls. I will see you soon. I will be in the Facebook group in 10 minutes if you're going to be there. And other than that, I'll probably see some of you on Friday. Namaste. Thanks for being here.